My husband, Michael, left David Primark after receiving his inheritance. I don't need a life with you anymore. I am inheriting $5 million. I don't want you when I have that money. His cold words implied the end of our marriage. After a long time together, I felt like an obstacle, but he didn't know the significant secret associated with the $5 million in inheritance yet. Mom, is it true that Grandpa is in critical condition? My daughter Emma asked me unexpectedly. Supposedly, Lucas's serious health problem was a secret between Michael and I. Did you hear that from your dad? Only Michael would have told you? Yes, he called me and asked me to renounce Grandma's inheritance, Emma said. Her words upset me, and because of that phone call, our peaceful life was going to be shaken up. A few days later, Lucas died peacefully. Since getting married, I have lived with Michael's parents and have never hesitated to support them when their health deteriorated. It has been 5 years since Michael's mother passed away, and now we have received the news of Lucas passing. The funeral went smoothly, but the moment I thought I was free from tension, my husband's behavior changed drastically. What are you doing here? Why hasn't it been cleaned properly lately? Michael often pointed out minor dust and small stains. I'm sorry. I must have missed it. I will clean it right away. This place isn't clean either. Do you really clean every day? Of course, I do the same thing every day, I replied, even though I couldn't understand why Michael was angry. But it seemed that the issue wasn't just about cleaning. Why are you doing this? I want you to pay more attention to the taste of the food when you cook. It was hard when the dishes that I put a lot of effort into were criticized one by one. Even dishes that he used to like are now not appreciated. Is something bothering you? I asked, but it only made his mood worse. It was useless to deny it. To be honest, your cooking is not good. I have been tolerating it because my parents have never complained, but deep down, I've always felt that it is tasteless. Michael's words pierced me coldly and sharply in the heart. It was the first time that he had ever criticized me so severely. I knew when Michael was upset, anything I said would only fan the flames. My mom always cleaned and did laundry perfectly, and she cooked with care at mealtimes without cutting corners. I'm nothing like her, he said, and I've been patient, but I can't stand it anymore. He compared me to his mom and criticized me for the first time. All I could do was reflect on myself. I'm sorry, I thought. I couldn't imagine that he valued my cooking so little. Michael always smiled and said it was delicious when we ate. When we got married, his mom gave me cooking advice, but he found my cooking tasteless. Tears started to flow when I realized he always thought my cooking was bad. Do you think anything will change if you cry? Your tears mean nothing now. Don't show them to me. Lately, everything just feels so tedious. After saying those words, Michael suddenly stood up and left the house, slamming the door behind him. As he walked away, I called out, Michael, where are you going? Come back. But it seemed he didn't hear me. My mind was in turmoil, unable to keep up with this sudden change, unable to understand what had just happened. Until a few months ago, we were a couple who shared everything, held hands, shared the small joys of daily life, and tackled minor grievances together. I couldn't understand why we had become so distant. And then I remembered the contents of the call with Emma. It was about Lucas's inheritance. There was a hint of hesitation in her voice. That night, Michael returned home much later than usual, and I missed the chance to ask him about it. Was something going on? Maybe Michael had found out some information about the inheritance and wanted to keep it for himself. I tried to talk to Emma. Why are they discussing inheritance when Grandpa is still healthy? She expressed doubts about Michael and told him the same. If how the inheritance is split doesn't change, everything will go to me. Considering Emma's position, I think this is the best solution. Recalling Michael's recent cold behavior towards Emma, doubts crossed my mind. If he intended to take all of the inheritance and abandon me, that thought tightened my chest and tears welled up in my eyes again. In my pain, I became acutely aware of the sounds around me. As the room became eerily silent, a sudden ringing of the phone echoed through it. I wasn't feeling up to answering it, but it might be important. Checking the caller ID, I saw Michael's name, the same Michael who left the house earlier. on the screen. Picking it up felt exhausting, but I didn't want to deal with any repercussions for ignoring it either, so I reluctantly answered, "What are you doing? Don't make me wait. I'm running out of time," he said in a sudden authoritative tone, taking me by surprise. Although he could be stubborn at times, he wasn't usually someone who yelled without reason. Shocked by his change in demeanor, I sighed slightly, hoping he hadn't noticed. "What's wrong? Is there something wrong? I have something to talk about. I'll be home soon. Stay home and wait for me." Recently, his voice sounded colder than usual. I replied with a short "okay" and hung up quickly. Looking at the clock, it had been more than 3 hours since Michael left. I was crying, overwhelmed with confusion and pain, and I hadn't noticed how much time had passed. After a while, I heard the door open and Michael's footsteps. The sweet scent of a body wash that we didn't use at home wafted from him. This unfamiliar smell intensified my pain in my chest. Let's be honest, I want to end our relationship. In return, I'm willing to pay you $220,000 as a token of appreciation. His words were what I had feared. Still, faced with this reality, my shock was so great that I felt my tears dry up. "I'm really tired of you not taking care of things at home. I want to have a peaceful old age," said Michael. I also had dreams of a peaceful retirement. However, the person who started to destroy that dream was Michael himself. "Why do you?" My words trailed off as I tried to think of what to say. Michael looked at me with an arrogant smile. At that moment, an unfamiliar ringtone from his cell phone filled the room. It was a different tone from his usual ringtone. To me, this unusual sound seemed to indicate communication from a specific person. I felt sorry, but I hadn't finished my chores yet. I sensed a softness in Michael's voice that was different from how he usually spoke to me. It sounded kinder and more personal. Furthermore, the sweet smell of body wash in the room, the unusual ringtone earlier, and his changed tone. All these things hinted at something he might be hiding. "I knew it," I whispered quietly, so that Michael wouldn't hear. He had been too open about his extramarital affair. Considering the inheritance he might receive soon, alimony might not be significant for him, even if his unfaithfulness becomes evident. After ending the call, Michael looked down at me with cold, emotionless eyes. "My intentions have not changed. I want you to sign this document. I will contact you later. Please make sure it is signed by then. I do not plan to return to this house. Remember, this house is now yours." Without uttering another word, or even looking at my face, Michael headed towards the door. What did our 40-year-long marriage mean? A few days later, I found myself in a lawyer's office. As I gathered information about Michael's actions and Lucas's inheritance and explained them to our daughter Emma, her complexion changed. It was painful for me to show our mistakes to our daughter, but Emma, out of love for me, allowed her emotions to express themselves and shed tears. Then she showed strong determination to confront Michael and introduced me to a lawyer who would support us. "Hello, my name is Robinson. I am here to handle your case. I will do my best to support you." The woman named Robinson, sitting across from me, seemed to be in her late 40s and exuded a calm aura. Her neatly groomed hair and clothing gave off a professional vibe, and her clear way of speaking gave me a sense of assurance. "I'm really sorry for approaching you so suddenly. My name is Elizabeth Johnson, and I'm feeling a bit nervous as this is our first meeting in such circumstances." "That's okay. I have already heard some information from Emma. Emma gave me an overview, so we were able to talk more in detail without any worries. Based on the research I did over the past few days and the information that Mrs. Robinson gathered separately for me, we confirmed the facts. My husband has no siblings, so if Emma renounces her inheritance, the massive fortune, which is worth about $5 million, would all go to him. Also, their affair with a woman named Jennifer started at a bar that they happened to be visiting, and it seems their relationship lasted for about 6 months. She seemed very different from me, and I wanted to know more about what happened between them. Through a collaborative investigation with Mrs. Robinson, we discovered an important fact that my husband may not know yet. "Elizabeth, how do you intend to proceed from here?" Mrs. Robinson asked me in a gentle tone with soft eyes. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I deeply appreciate it, I replied, smiling at Mrs. Robinson as I handed over the fee for the procedures. After a brief exchange, I quietly left the office. 5 days later, Michael called me on my cell phone and proposed a meeting at a quiet cafe. Arriving a bit earlier, the cafe was surprisingly empty. The owner greeted me warmly and suggested I choose a seat. I chose one by the window, enjoying the calm outside view. A while later, the bell rang and Michael and his girlfriend Jennifer walked in. When he saw me, Michael smirked with pride. "Are you prepared for the divorce?" I was surprised by this first statement. He seemed convinced that he was in control. "Is this your new colleague?" I hadn't expected her to bring him to such an important meeting, and I was surprised at his decision. I wondered if he had changed because of cheating, or if he was always like that. I can't tell. "You are Michael's wife, right?" Jennifer said with a sudden smile. "My name is Michael. I recently started dating her." I couldn't quite understand the meaning of her smile. "I heard a lot about you from Michael. When I saw you in person, I noticed you look a bit older. I wonder how he endured all those years." I felt sorry for him. Indeed, Jennifer took great care of herself. She looked younger than her real age in her 60s. Compared to me, I might look like my age, but I didn't like the way she said it. Michael interrupted. "Jennifer, those are the things I warned you about. But I did think so." "But Michael, if it were me, I would cherish you more," I said softly. "I know, Elizabeth. I don't want you to overthink it anymore. I just want you to file the divorce papers," Michael replied with an expected attitude. "Hold on, there's something I want to discuss," I said, noticing a hint of confusion on Michael's face. "What are you getting at? Is it all about your father's inheritance? Is that why after all our years of marriage you're deciding this?" I wanted to know the truth behind all these events. "I can't see how your father's inheritance is related to you. That's strictly my father's. I've heard detailed stories about your father's vast inheritance from Emma. I know how much it is worth, so what? The inheritance isn't something you should take." But let me answer. Actually, more than the inheritance itself, it's the end of caring for my parents that is one of the reasons why I want to leave you. Just a caregiver role. How did Michael see me only as a caregiver and not the loving wife I was? I don't even have the energy to cry. "Can we speed this up, Michael? I want to start our new life. Besides, haven't you let go of Michael yet?" "Don't make me say it again. I'm not thinking about starting over with you now. I want you to sign the divorce papers." Waves of emotion struck my heart with intense anger and deep sadness. My hand trembled slightly. Taking a deep breath, I took out the divorce documents. "But my name hasn't been written yet. The situation hasn't resolved yet to hand them over. You remember promising me the house and money, right?" I distinctly remember when we discussed it. "Yes, I said that. I am a man of my word, so I intend to give you the house and the money. You say you're kind, but a truly kind person wouldn't just use their wife as a mere caregiver and then abandon her. So I'm demanding rightful compensation of $30,000 and the rights to the house." "What compensation? When we talked about money, it was supposed to be $20,000. You always nitpick at the very end. Your attitude of trying to pay me the absolute minimum is so obvious, but the difference of $10 is a lot to me. I think $30 because compensation is fair. Jennifer is your girlfriend, right?" I thought of claiming money from her too, but instead I want $30,000 as compensation, and I will sign the divorce papers here in front of you. Jennifer reacted unexpectedly first, commenting, "About $30,000 should be fine. Michael, pay it if you're satisfied with it," she said. Michael finally accepted the alignment of $30,000 after Jennifer's comment. "Now we need your signature on the land title change document and the notarized agreement." Michael was surprised by my preparation. I said calmly, "I still have a life to live," and eased his suspicion. We took our respective seals and lined up at the designated spot. Michael smiled as if anticipating something. "So, Elizabeth, will you sign the divorce papers now?" "Understood. Here are the papers." As I wrote my name carefully and stamped it firmly, Michael couldn't help but laugh out loud. "With this, we have no relationship anymore. Also, I want to tell you something. Actually, I've inherited $5 million, so you don't need me. Thanks for the divorce. You were a foolish ex-wife who let go so easily for only $30,000. Michael's voice snarled behind me as I walked away, followed by loud laughter from Michael and Jennifer. I hurriedly left and went to the city hall. My sole goal was to complete the procedure as soon as possible and completely sever ties with them. They might be happy now, but how long will their happiness last? A month later, I quickly sold the house I had received from Michael and prepared for a new life. I decided to live near my daughter Emma, who was planning to start her own life near her husband's parents' home. Michael's mother lived nearby, so I thought there would be times when I felt cautious. However, contrary to my fears, Emma's husband welcomed me warmly and was always considerate. This made me feel very reassured. My daughter seemed angry at first, but after I told her something, her expression completely changed and she smiled bright. I suspected that Michael would eventually realize my plan, so as proof, I didn't change my mobile number deliberately. The day when my intuition became reality came sooner than expected. In the afternoon, my phone rang repeatedly, and sure enough, it was Michael calling. He called several times, but I deliberately didn't answer at first. After receiving multiple calls, I eventually picked up the phone. "Hello, why are you doing this?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "What's the matter?" "You called out of the blue." Michael raised his voice. "What's wrong? Where are you now?" I thought he might have visited our old house, but in fact, that house had already been sold. Since we decided to divorce, there is no need for us to be involved anymore. Where did Emma go? I couldn't find her. It seemed like she went to her previous house. Obviously, she wasn't there, and I handled all the information and arrangements related to Emma's husband's home, so Michael didn't know anything. He seemed stuck and contacted me. "Yes, actually, Emma moved to a new place," I replied calmly. "Why didn't I tell you something so important?" "Also, did you know about it too?" Michael finally realized the truth. "By that, do you mean the significant hidden debt that Lucas had?" Actually, when I investigated Lucas's inheritance in detail, I was shocked by the amount of inheritance. At the same time, however, I found out about considerable hidden debt. Perhaps, while he was alive, he estimated that he could repay the debt with approximately $5 million, but he hid this fact from us. Unfortunately, he passed away before he could pay off the debt, and it was left unpaid. When you receive an inheritance, you also inherit any hidden debts. Michael was blinded by the lure of easy money and neglected to thoroughly verify and investigate. That was his biggest mistake. "So, did you really know about my father's debt?" I explained calmly. "Information is easy to find. Anyone can find it with a little searching." That's how I noticed it. I could imagine Michael becoming red with anger at the other end of the call. "Anyway, what about the promised money? What about the money you intended to return?" Michael's real goal was money after all. Besides, it's about that property. If I had known about my dad's debt from the beginning, I wouldn't have gotten involved at all. "I understand how you feel," Michael said, revealing his suspicions. He thought it deep down, but chose not to say it. "But think about it, putting aside the money issue for a moment. You got to marry a very attractive woman, right? Isn't that pretty lucky?" Of course, I didn't know if Jennifer chose Michael because of his assets, or if it was truly love. As soon as Jennifer found out about his debt, she left him. I thought she would. "It's exactly what I expected," Michael confessed. "Think about it. How about starting over with me? I felt deceived by Jennifer. I just realized that you're the person I really need." Michael's tone suddenly dropped and became emotional. He wondered if he had forgotten everything he had done to me. I thought to myself, feeling cornered every day. I'm being rushed by collectors and the debt I can't pay is piling up. I've reached my limit. I truly feel like my life is in danger. "Please help me," Michael pleaded in desperation. Even after hearing his desperate plea, I thought calmly, if I were in his situation, would I help him? I am living peacefully now and truly happy. In the future, I want to continue living in peace. "Perhaps you've forgotten, but do you remember what I said in response?" I asked Michael. For a moment, he seemed lost for words at the other end of the line. Is that what you meant back then? Yes, that's exactly it. Michael, I am truly grateful that we could get divorced. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to choose a new path, I said firmly, feeling the tremor in his voice and tears. But for my sake, I made my decision and quietly ended the call, marking the complete end to our relationship. I don't know how Michael's life is now or how he is repaying his debt, but I hope he is making an effort somewhere. As I contemplated the situation, I thought to myself, Elizabeth, how about going for a walk outside? I asked while looking at the beautiful scenery. He is very warm and is always there for me. Spending time with him gives me unparalleled happiness. After the phone call with Michael, there was a lingering sense of closure in my heart. His desperate pleas and regretful words echoed a past that I was finally ready to let go. My life has taken a turn for the better and I am determined to embrace the peace and joy that await me. My relationship with my daughter, Emma, had flourished. Living near her and her husband's family brought a sense of security and belonging that I hadn't felt for years. Emma's husband, Thomas, is a kind and supportive man who always ensures that I feel welcomed and valued. Our new life is filled with simple pleasures and warm connections. One afternoon, while I was strolling through a charming park in Chicago with a wonderful man whom I had met through a hobby group, a sense of contentment washed over me. His name is Richard, and his gentle spirit resonates deeply with me. We share many interests and have quickly become close friends. As we walk hand in hand, admiring the vibrant flowers and laughing at the children playing nearby, I can't help feeling grateful for this second chance at happiness. Elizabeth, you seem lost in thought, says Richard with concern in his eyes. I was just thinking about how far I've come, I replied with a smile. Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? Indeed it does. I'm glad we met each other, Richard said, gently squeezing my hand. As we continued walking, I noticed a familiar figure in the distance. My heart skipped a beat when I recognized Michael. He looked tired and worn, in stark contrast to the confident man I used to know. He was sitting on a bench with his head in his hands, seeming lost in despair. Is that Michael? Richard asked, following my gaze. I nodded. Yes, it is. It looks like he hit rock bottom. Richard's voice was gentle. Do you want to talk to him? I hesitated, then shook my head. No, I said everything I needed to say. He made his choices and I made mine. We continued walking, leaving Michael behind. As we strolled, I felt a sense of liberation. My past no longer had a hold on me, and I was free to create a future filled with love and joy. A few days later, I received a surprise letter in the mail. It was from a lawyer's office, and the contents stunned me. Michael had died, and in his final act of redemption, he left his remaining assets to me. The amount wasn't substantial, but it provided some extra security for my future. As I read the letter, I felt sadness for Michael. Despite everything, he tried to make up for his actions in the end. I decided to use the money to establish a scholarship fund in his name to help young people who have faced hardships but are determined to create better futures for themselves. This seemed like the right thing to do to honor his memory from our complicated past. Life moved forward, and with Richard by my side, I found happiness in everyday moments. We traveled, explored new hobbies, and cherished our time together. My relationship with Emma grew stronger, and I found immense joy in being part of her growing family. One evening, as Richard and I watched the sunset from our favorite spot by the lake, he turned to me and said, Elizabeth, I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me? Tears of joy filled my eyes as I nodded. Yes, Richard, I will. As we embraced, I knew that this was the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. The past was behind us, and the future was full of endless possibilities. Love had returned to my life, and I was ready to accept it fully, with a heart that had been healed and grown stronger through all the twists and turns of my journey.